there's the ever-present whisper that he's somehow on Russia's side or Putin's side. There's the perhaps more straightforward explanation that he may just be in this for a lot of money. It's really, really too early to say what his motives are.
Hello to you, I'm John Pienaar with Times Radio Drive. Thanks for joining me. Now, this moment has been coming, and now it's here. It's a moment of decision. It's a moment of redefinition. If it wasn't already clear, we will soon know, is Vladimir Putin at all interested in stopping the killing in Ukraine? And after taking decision after decision that's helped Russia kill Ukrainians, all supposedly in the name of forcing a deal and a ceasefire, whose side is President Trump really on? Well, the cold fear is that we may already know the answer, and he's not on the side of Ukraine. The hopes of a pause in the war, more than ever a trial by combat of Western democratic values against Vladimir Putin's aggression, they're focused now on imminent talks in Saudi Arabia. A senior US diplomat has now been quoted in Washington, D.C., saying there are substantial hopes of progress in those talks. Could that be a good sign? Now, on one side of the table, Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky's team, they're supported by European and Western allies, including Keir Starmer, and they're advised by Starmer's security advisor. On the other side, you've got President Donald Trump's delegation. They're there to hear and to discuss terms for a ceasefire to lay before Russia and the Kremlin. Well, Zelensky, he's going to be in Jeddah today. He's already arrived. He won't be joining the talks, though, and Russia won't be there at all. And the nagging, painful worry is that Russia doesn't need to be there, that President Trump now seems to be so squarely in Russia's corner that hopes of the Jeddah talks delivering a plan capable of stopping the war look, well, fragile at best before they even begin tomorrow. Now, will that turn out to be a bit too gloomy? Is it too pessimistic? What do you think? Send me a text, 87222. Start with the word Times, or maybe a tweet to @TimesRadio. We'll start then with those talks in Jeddah, and welcome to the programme. Back to the programme, as always, Catherine Philp, the World Affairs Editor at The Times. Hello to you, Catherine, and welcome.
Hello, John. Thank you.
Always good to hear your voice, Catherine. So look, we know, don't we, that Ukraine has got its briefcase with its ceasefire terms. They've been advised by Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer's advisor, and Starmer himself is supporting the effort in his direct contacts with Trump. Now, we've got that senior diplomat in D.C. saying that there are hopes for substantial progress. But I guess, what do you think, Catherine? I guess we'll believe it when we see it.
Well, indeed. I mean, I think that, we have to remember where US officials are coming from when they say things like that. So that could, frankly, mean that they think Zelensky is ready to capitulate to what Russia wants, and that would be the end of the conflict in one way. I think what the Ukrainians are going to try and do is obviously dial down the tensions that have been since that disastrous Oval Office meeting, but also to present themselves the outline of something that could serve as a first step in a ceasefire plan. And so that we've got these indications that they'll talk about having a ceasefire in the air and on the sea, and see if that flies with the Americans. Obviously, it's then up to the Americans to take anything that's discussed to the Russians, because there are no direct talks between the two sides.
Right. And Catherine, I guess the worry, I say the worry, one of many worries, are those reports that Donald Trump wants more concessions before ceasefire negotiations even get started with Russia, assuming that they do. The idea of conceding more territory, Ukrainian territory, before that gets going. The idea of Zelensky's own political scalp being offered before those talks begin. These things aren't promising.
They're not great. In a sense, though, they are just a reiteration in a different context, in a different manner, to things that Trump has said before. So, it's always very difficult to tell with him what amounts to a concrete demand and what he's sort of throwing out for discussion, and indeed what he's throwing out as a means to apply pressure to those who are talking. So this is obviously something that's come up before, and it became louder when things got nasty with Zelensky, essentially in the Oval Office, that he could be the obstacle and maybe needs to get out of the way. But I don't see much domestic appetite for that right now in Ukraine itself. And talk of some of the opposition figures speaking with Trump has not gone down well domestically at all, and I don't think will help them.
And how on earth, Catherine, must they be feeling in Kyiv, in Ukraine now, when they look at the way that President Trump is tightening the screw? Just last week, that move to block arms supplies, that move to block vital intelligence. And on top of that, there was blockage of commercial satellite imaging, so useful to Ukrainian troops. And even medical supplies, I read, have been interrupted and blocked by America.
Yeah, I mean, this is all a means to put pressure on Zelensky. It's almost become circular, like who these ideas come from, because we've seen now that Israel has cut off the remaining electricity that it supplies to Gaza. Now, did they get that idea from Trump, or did Trump get the idea from them having cut off aid before, that this is how you pressure someone? Obviously, there's a huge difference between Hamas and the Ukrainian government. One is a terrorist group, the other a victim of an invasion, but these are quite crude ways to put pressure on people. We have seen the effects of the withdrawal, the suspension of that intelligence cooperation, because it's particularly acute when Ukraine is trying to target the places in Russia from which it is being bombarded. Yeah. So, for example, on the front line in Kursk, that enclave of Russia where Ukrainian troops have taken some ground, they have lost a lot of ground in just the last couple of days, where they've come under a very fierce offensive by the Russians, who've been clearly taking advantage of those gaps in intelligence sharing. And indeed, we've seen civilian losses of life because of the lack of intelligence that Ukraine had about those missile strikes, particularly in Donetsk. And I mean, there is perhaps some hope that those kind of developments could move President Trump. He did say that the intelligence sharing was just about resumed. I don't think it is, but it perhaps indicates that he has been somewhat, affected or moved by the fact that he's seen the results quite so dramatically already. I
suppose we can hope, can't we? And just lastly, just to add to the litany of examples of the Trump administration siding, it seems on the Russian side, Bloomberg reporting now that America has blocked at the G7 a proposal for a task force to tackle those shadow ships that are used to carry contraband Russian oil.
I mean, that is extraordinary in many ways. If you think that, I mean, this is sort of a great example of how much the kind of old international order has been ripped up, because facilitating Russian oil smuggling. I think we can all remember when Trump was furious at Germany for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and having that was before the conflict in Ukraine. He was angry with Germany for going ahead with that because he thought it made Europe too dependent on Russian oil. Now he's seeking to help Russia export its oil. Yeah. So it's very, very hard to figure out what on earth Trump is up to here. I mean, there's the ever-present whisper that he's somehow on Russia's side or Putin's side. There's the perhaps more straightforward explanation that he may just be in this for a lot of money. It's really, really too early to say what his motives are.
My word. Catherine, it is always good to talk to you. Catherine Philp, Times Home World Affairs editor.